Well, hey, teams, thank you, by the way, for what you do and for consistently delivering just amazing experiences for people and helping them experience Jesus. You got to remember, that's what we do. That's what we're about. And you guys, as our worship teams, are very, very public in that. You got to remember that people do look for that. And a lot of the buzz around our church and what we're about comes back to the music and the leadership of worship, not just the sound of the music, but the experience of it. We are known, and when we're on our game, I think people appreciate the passion that we show, things like that. So don't let that ever die or be taken for granted. On March 6th, we are going to shift gears on talking about love yet again. In January, we talked about love kind of generally speaking. In February, we talked about what love actually looks like in the workaday world, especially inside the church. On March 6th, we're going to shift gears again, and we're going to talk about love. We're going to call it Hard to Love. Subtitles, Loving Those You Don't. And what that means is we're talking about those outside. Now, and it gets into a number of different issues and challenges. We're going to start on March 6th. The topic that day, as I set up the series, is Jesus is famous for saying the line, love your enemies. I tell you, love your enemies, which is a built-in contradiction because by definition, your enemy is the one you don't love. I have a feeling he knew that too. But what does that mean? How does that work? What does that mean we do? And what we're going to do for the whole series is we're going to use it as a way to get on this idea of loving our city. It doesn't mean our cities are enemies, but during the series as an overall, we're going to talk about loving enemies. We're going to be talking about loving those who do not believe, people who are not Christians. And we're going to talk about just loving people that are your neighbors, the people you don't get along with. Maybe your coworkers, maybe you get along with them, or there's people out there that they're a love challenge, if you will. So but March 6th specifically, we'll set it all up by talking about this love your enemy thing. But again, I want to stress that we're going to use this to say, hey, we don't want to build just great churches. We want to build great cities. And to build a great city and to get out there in the community, you can't have this us versus them mentality. You're going to run into people and you're going to be engaged with people that don't agree with you and you don't agree with them. How do you do that? And how do you go out and actually love them, which means want their best, bless them? You know, Jesus said, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. It's talking about people who are actively against you. You're supposed to be praying for their good, for their forgiveness. We serve the one who hung on the cross and prayed for the people who were hanging him on the cross. That's who we serve. I'm going to share this I found this really, really interesting. They said the most famous statement that Jesus made and the most often quoted statement for the first 300 years of the church, when you go back and look at it in history, was that line, love your enemies. So they were really aware of that. Well, we've gotten to a place in church and life, because we're very political, especially in election year and all that, is that we're like, defeat your enemy, go after them. And so we're going to talk about the difficulties of that. That's what's set up. I don't know what kind of stuff to tell you to create around that. I would just say honor Jesus, who he is, that image of him being on the cross, praying for those who were persecuting him, that kind of love that he gave to those who were against him, who that didn't deserve it. That kind of stuff would be helpful. How to coach you on creativity, I don't know, other than to celebrate the immense, amazing character of Jesus' love for us. And I guess when it all comes down to it, at one time, we were his enemies. We were against him. Everybody was. And so just celebrating Christ's love and how immense it is and how amazing it is in song, in story, in imagery would be some ideas you could go with.